for joining us. We probably won't have another meeting now to September, but we wanted to meet with you and talk about some updates. John Reynolds has agreed to talk to us, and he's one of the premier founders of Jumping Worm Research. He's up in Canada, so hopefully he can talk to us about what he's been doing for years. So the newest thing, my cat just, they don't like it when you talk, so he just grabbed the camera and pulled it off. So anyway, so we have this symposium that's going along very well. It's part of the Healthy Soil Collaborative. So a group up in Vermont created a website and a collaborative to make people aware of jumping worm issues. And we had about 3 meetings, one with, I see Hillary Peterson's here. They had a really fantastic meeting, online meeting from the University of, from Maine Department of Natural Resources. And from that, like 475 people showed up. So we just, for a webinar, so we decided from the Healthy Soil Collaborative that we really need to make people understand the economic environmental impacts of jumping worms. So we're going to do an online workshop and also turn it into a special issue in some book literature. And we just started this. So we are just starting talking to people, figuring out their interest, making webinars so we can talk about what we need from you. And we're trying to make this really simple. We're trying to make it so you can talk about previous research, just talk about the topic, and topic is up to any changes you want, and co-authors are up to you as well. And we're going to video it. Anna's going to video it. Then we're going to turn it into a manuscript, send it back. And then you'll have time, plenty of time to work it into a manuscript. And then we'll edit that. And then we'll work with a journal. And I've talked to 3 journals. They're very interested in this. So we won't decide until we have a product to show them. And we will try to make it so it's very reasonable cost for the, publication costs now, but we're going out of our way and to make it very reasonable. And then we're also going to put this webinar online so any state and anybody can use it and visit it for certification credit. So I think all of you have received that. If you haven't, put your name in the chat and we'll send you one to look at. So that's kind of the main thing I want to talk to you about. We're continuing with our jumping worm research. We're finding out that the 2 natural plant products are quite obviously the best choice. Any other pesticide, you have to up the amount of label rate so high that nobody will ever register it. So the previous person at this university, Jenna Simons, has a paper published, and she said cypermethrin works, but we can't get it to work until it's like 18x, which is a huge volume because it's a really low amount of AI. So it looks like the 2 saponims are the way to go, and there is already a label for Cahia saponaria, the tree-based saponin from the Peruvian tree. And so that one already has a label for both nursery, for pots, and for landscape use, and for nursery use in soil. So it looks like after we get this data set and figures, we're just finishing it. We will contact them and talk to them about trying to get jumping worms. So it looks like even though, so that's called soap tree. So soap tree works, but even though the one that works at the lowest rate is tea seed meal, we can't get anybody willing to pay for the pesticide registration for that. So that's kind of a summary where we are coming from. And we're going to give you time to think about what you want to share with us. But maybe, John, you could start talking to us about your history with jumping worms. I know you do distribution work, and to do that, you must use some keys. And we're really kind of interested. We're all having trouble identifying our jumping worms. And what keys you use, and do you have to dissect them, or can you use external morphology? That's kind of has been a continuing topic of the group.
Well, I started, I guess, with jumping worms probably about 1970 down in Tennessee. And I worked the Southeast, particularly Tennessee, up to Virginia heavily. And then I moved back to Canada. And it wasn't until 2014 that I recorded the first 2 species across the river from Detroit in the Ojibwe Prairie. And then it was about 7 years, and then we found it in various other parts of Ontario, and then New Brunswick, and same time in Quebec, which isn't surprising because they were in Vermont and New Hampshire in the counties that are on the Quebec border, and there's no reason why people couldn't have taken them across. There's a lot of horticultural activity between people in those two states and the people in Quebec, and they travel back and forth a lot. Yeah, really, to be absolutely sure, you have to dissect them. And that's easier with some species because they're a lot bigger. But when you get into some of the ones that are smaller, like Amenthus minimus, you're a very small worm. And it's the location of the various organs and how many there are and if they're there. The big problem for this group being that they're parthenogenetic. There are various morphs of different species. And I know I used to work with Dr. Gates years ago, and he was the one that started finding all these different morphs from the work that he started in Burma and India before he started working in North America. So, that's an issue you have to be careful. But yeah, they're I don't mind working on I hate Diplocardia because they're another North American genus found in the southeast, which dissection again is essential, but some of those are so very small and thin. Fortunately, I found colleagues who like to work with them, so I work with them. But when you're into the jumping worms, they're I guess some of the groups that have worked in the States, so a couple of ex-grad students, I think in Wisconsin, and also they were in Maryland and Virginia. I don't know where they're moving around to now, or they may have gone back to Taiwan, some of them. They've done excellent work, good publications, good pictures, good keys. You have to have a bit of a understanding of earthworm.
This is what happens to your body fat.
Hello? Somebody talking to me?
No, go ahead.
Um, yeah, you have to know what you're looking at, but it's not hard to do. But a lot of people don't like the fact that you have to dissect them. In fact, we've had a lot of people in the past that have left the field because when you started to have to dissect them, they bailed. So I studied there, I guess, up till about several decades ago, really. About Virginia was about as far as they were really being widespread. Actually, when I started in Tennessee, there was very few throughout the state. Most of them were in the east on the natural forests that ran along the eastern border between Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina. That was about where you would find them. You wouldn't find them out in the state anywhere else. I'm sure they've moved since then. I'm sure there weren't any really being reported back then in the Midwest. There were those I know from Connecticut and New York, but most of those, when you dug into them, you found out that they were in golf courses or something, and they had been brought up in ball and burlap and escaped into the area that way. But now I know I was at speaking at Hamilton University, at Colgate University in Hamilton, New York, a couple of years ago, and I just couldn't believe how thick they were in the gardens at that university. And I worked with Joseph in Vermont, and I know that they were quite widespread in there. So I knew eventually we were going to get them in Quebec and New Brunswick, and they are spreading across through southern Ontario. We have a paper coming, and my colleague that's working and heading it up, he's on parental leave, and I'm being ghosted. I've been trying to get hold of him for a couple of months, and he's kind of hard. I would think when the baby's having a nap, he'd have time to do some work. But We've found them in a lot of them in some of the ravines and whatnot in southern Ontario, and we've got quite a bit of data coming out in that paper. Hopefully, I thought it would have been out by now, but I would say probably within 6 months it should be out. So finding people, I know it's more widespread up here. I speak to all the sort of master gardeners and hort clubs that do presentations to them, and I ask people to bring their worms in. Nobody brings in. Some people brought it, said they were sure they had jumping worms at home, but when I went to their residences and farms to check it out, none of the species were jumping worms. They were pleased to know that, but some of the others, I know around Guelph, she belonged to the Hort Society, and they were trading back plants, and that's how they got spread that throughout their large property, and they've also gone into the neighbors' adjacent properties. But we're only looking here in Canada so far at 4 or 5 species out of about the 16 that you're likely to encounter in North America, and some of them have only been like Minim has only been once, and Pithymera bicincta has only been found once. Most of what we're getting is Amynthus agrestis, Metaphyr Hilgendorfi, and Amynthus tokyoensis, and those 3 tend to cohabit together. It's not uncommon to find the 3 of them, but there again, you have tokyoensis has a different form, and it you'll find very large ones and very small ones. It's got to do with the morphs. So I mean, that's what I've written. My preference is to really work on that area up here, but getting people to submit specimens that can be verified. A lot of people will tell you they've got them, but when you go to their location, it's kind of hard to find any. But I know they're here. So, I mean, if you've got specific questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I
Yeah,
don't hear.
real quick, it looks like Laura says in the chat, where's the best place to see maps of which jumping worm species have been found in Canada?
2, 3 of my papers will show maps. And this other one I'm talking about will come out. I got to think of what the names of them.
John, can we contact you for the maps and then we can send them to that group?
All my papers are on ResearchGate for free. You can download.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll send you an email, ask you which ones you would recommend, and then we'll download them for the group.
I could send you the papers as attachments. That's no problem.
Okay, that would be great.
Yep.
Yeah,
John,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, for anyone who works with like EdMaps or iNaturalist, is that very widespread in Canada?
Yes. It's quite difficult to identify worms from pictures.
Sure, yeah.
And because the aspect of the photograph they've shown you doesn't show you the character you need to see to do it. And I've been involved in papers they've written about trying to get people into iNaturalist, but I do find many of the earthworm records suspect. They just aren't anywhere close. Some of them, and a lot of them have generalized. It's easier in Canada because we only have now, I think, 37 species, and if you knock out about 12 that are very, very rare and only in limited isolated areas, you're only talking about 12 to 15 that you're ever likely going to encounter. Here makes it a little easier, but you go down into the United States, it's much more difficult. There's so many more species. I mean, Diplocardia alone, which is I've never found any in Canada, and people working for me, there's over 50 species in that genus alone, and that's more than we've got, a lot more than we've got in the whole country. So makes it more difficult, more challenging for people in the United States who are not really familiar with earthworms to spot them.
Thanks, John.
I've got a question. John, thanks so much for talking to us. We really do need technical information. And so it's great that somebody with you with all this experience is devoting time to our group. So I wanted to thank you for that. I wanted to ask you, so we're kind of fixed on we wanted to, so I just want to anecdotally tell you on our campus, there are huge numbers too. So Minnesota doesn't have a lot of native earthworm species due to glaciation. We have a researcher here that's been working on worms for years. And so they're all over campus. We just go to the student union and we get tons of them. So they're also very, very abundant. So does it matter if we can't tell them to species? In your experience, do all the species do basically the same thing?
No. There are different. The jumping worms are more cohesive in a group more than the lumbricids. The lumbricids that you have at least 5 to 6 different ecological groupings that do different things in the soil. The jumping worms, there aren't any real anistic species. They don't go really deeply. Most of them are either in the surface soil or in the litter. More, that's where you're likely to find them. And they don't. I don't know of any that are really what we call deep burrowing species. And as you all know, they don't do anything really positive to the soil like the others. Is that a cat or is it my imagination?
No, I'm sorry. It's when I talk, this is a perpetual problem. Cat
Doesn't
owners at work at home, everything's fine until they hear your voice and then they attack you. So sorry.
if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. So yeah, they're more. There's not the diversity of different activities that these worms do as compared to the European worms and a lot of the Asian worms I've been working with the last decade or so. So they're mostly epigeic, or what we would call they're not. I wouldn't even really call many of them endogenous, but they could be. There's like I say, some of the there's only a few that I really work with up here. I've only worked with probably about 7 or 8 different species in that particular group. So there could be others that I haven't had a chance to work with, or I haven't found too many people that are actually working with them. So, but I suspect their activity is going to be similar to the ones you've got. Now, are these worms all over your campus? Are these jumping worms or just earthworms?
No, these are jumping worms.
Jumping worms, yeah. Yeah, people have brought them. I think when I was writing, I worked with this group. We did a paper. Right? You're in Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I did a paper on the earthworms of Minnesota, and there was only one record of one of these ferritemoid worms about eastern central part of the state. There was just one collection that I was where they had chimeric made it, I think, and that was years ago. So, and there weren't, and I guess I'm trying to remember Cindy Hale was one person that was the author on the paper, and the other one was, oh gosh, he was at the University of Minnesota. It'll come to me. And they didn't talk about them at all when we were working on the paper. The only ones we were talking about were the European worms. And when did we write that paper? Probably a couple of decades ago, anyway. So I don't know when they first started becoming noticeable in Minnesota.
Well, Lee Frylock, who's the earthworm specialist here, professor at the university, he started to see them in 2005 or so in Minneapolis, and now they're very, very common on our campus.
Yeah, this paper was written back around the turn of the century, and it would have been very early 2000. Who's that, Professor? I didn't quite hear the name.
Oh,
That
Freilich,
was Lee Freilich.
Lee Freilich.
Okay.
Is Lee here? I don't think he's here today. He's usually here, but it's
Okay.
field season.
No, I guess the chap I dealt with probably retired by now.
Yeah, it's probably Lee. He's never going to retire, but
No, it wasn't him. It
oh, it
was
wasn't him. Okay.
no.
Well, maybe if you bump into that, you can send us that paper.
Yeah.
So I've read from Ohio that Tokiensis is found in lawns. Is that
It's
in
very
turf
weak.
lawns? Tokiensis.
Yeah, what about it?
It's found in lawns and grass. Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
That's there in Guelph. I found them there too.
And so the only reason I ask is, do they have a higher thermal load? Does
Sorry, do they have,
anybody know that? Are they more Tokiensis able to tolerate higher temperatures?
uh, yes, probably. I'm trying to think of that. The people I went to had me come to their property in Guelph a couple of years ago. I think there were two or some species there, and that was the first time they peeled back their lawn, and that was the first time I had really seen them there. Most of the people that have them in their gardens. They love them. They love certain kinds of mulch, particularly if you've got chip piles and things like that. You'll often find them. But yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I wear hearing aids, so sometimes I don't catch everything that's said.
So we have another question. So we're always trying to figure out with the jumping worms why they're so abundant here. I mean, it's an invasive species.
Yeah.
But do you know of any research done in its range, its natural range, where they look at pathogens or predators that maintain their populations? And I guess a subset of that question is, why do you think they're in such high numbers here in the North America compared to where they come from?
They're very aggressive compared to the others, and it's usually the niche utilization theory. We even see it in the European worms, for example. In Canada, we don't have bimastus, and Dendrodrilus rubidus is the cortical species. And when you move down into the states, and particularly when you get down around Virginia, when the bimastus become quite more prevalent in the populations, they take over the cortical area, and the Dendrodrilus are bumped out. So I would expect the same thing I've seen here if you get high concentrations, and the fact that they're parthenogenetic and they can rapidly increase in an area, and that, which is amazing considering they only essentially live for a year, and then the cocoons are the ones that come out in the spring and take over. Although I read something recently, somebody doubted that in some area that had very mild winters, whether they were really only living a year. But I
We've
can't,
kept them in the lab and we find that they only live a year.
yeah,
But the
that's,
cocoons in the lab will start hatching earlier than May, but
yeah,
we don't
yeah,
see them.
yeah, you probably got a nicer environment in the lab than they would be outside. Yeah. So the fact that they can, just a short lifespan can lay so many cocoons with eggs in them, and they, like I say, they're more aggressive and they will take over an area. They change the soil structure that is quite different than well, we can't say they're all invasive essentially in up here and in the northern states, but they if they're present, the others tend to disappear out of a particular area. They just take over to the detriment of any other species.
So, John, what do you think is the main method of transportation? You said they really like mulch. So, is it
Mm.
people moving mulch around or nursery stock, or
Yeah,
how do you think they're
nursery
moving
stock.
around?
A lot of it is nursery stock. And when I'm lecturing out, I always tell the people, if you're buying, I go to these Hort Society meetings, and the people all bring in plants and trade with one another, and that's a prime way of spreading it if they have it. If you're buying nursery stock, buy bare root. That way you know for sure what you're going. But yeah, they have to be vectored somehow. The worms themselves aren't going to move very far, but you're moving it in. If you're doing farm work, and I have some areas where the people have some fields where they're bad, and they tell them, really water down the tractor when you move from one field to the other, so you're not, taking these big clumps of earth which might have them in them from one place to another. So that's the kind of control you're going to do, because until they get some pesticides that work and that are available, it's just natural cleanliness, cleaning your tools from one place to another, cleaning any equipment from one field to another, one garden bed to another is the best way to stop the spread. But once they're in, they're damn hard to get rid of, because unless you get every single one of them out, you're they can take over again.
Yeah, that parthenogenesis is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Have you seen any data of them causing an economic problem to some agricultural crop like corn? Corn is a grass, so if they're feeding on grass in Ohio, they might start to feed on corn roots.
I haven't heard or read anything about that yet. I had something in my mind and it just flew. No, I haven't heard much in the way of major agricultural pests. Most people, it's got to do with horticultural crops. Most of the nurseries now are on the lookout and very careful when they're bringing material in to check that they're not spreading it.
So we have in the chat, somebody has a question for you, John. It's Joseph, and he says, although JW has been around for years in the southeastern US, you don't hear much about damage. Do you have a perspective on that?
Well, now what does he mean by damage? Is he talking agricultural products or is he talking horticultural products?
Joseph, are you here? Can you answer that?
It's actually me, Jim, Vera.
Oh.
I'm talking in landscapes or in forests. I know they've been in the forests in the southeast, but we never hear about, huge impacts. They may be happening, but we just don't hear about it.
Well, first of all, a lot of the forests, as I recall working in, I worked for Tall Timbers at one time, and a lot of the forests down there are pine forests, and they don't, their soils become quite acidic for earthworms. They're not, but your hardwood forests are another problem. And that's where you get a lot of the damage. You're seeing that up north too, and I know the work they've been doing in Wisconsin and Minnesota in the forest, and you've seen the pictures in their work on what damage can be done when you remove the litter layer by these guys.
So if somebody was going to ask you for a case study where you found economic and environmental damage, can you come up with a location that sticks out in your mind where you know that they've affected recruitment of seedlings in a forest or something major?
You're asking me?
Yes, I'm asking. Yeah.
Now, who's Joseph?
Oh, we don't know. Joseph. I don't know Joseph. So Jim's name, I got Joseph's name was next to the comment, and so I said Joseph.
Hi there.
It was Jim. There's Joseph. Oh, it's Joseph.
I'm here.
Yeah, so Joseph, yeah.
About 10 years ago, we did a study with Bruce Parker, who's an entomologist, but was interested in forest ecology as well. And we went to about 50 different sugar bush places from the very northern part of Vermont all the way down into Connecticut to get sort of an idea of what the damage is.
Is that Joe Gories? Is that Joe Gories?
Yeah, it is me. Hi, John. Um,
Yeah, you didn't have such a big beard last time that I really don't recall.
yeah, I know. We have to have beer
Yeah,
again.
yeah, you
Um,
got a lot of experience there in Vermont.
yeah, but it was really interesting. When we did the research, we found that and none of that was really significant. So we're talking about like p values of 0.06 or 0.08 or something was annoyingly not significant at that very narrow margin. But we found um, uh, that when you compared places with Lumbricus terrestris and Minthus, Minthus species, um, uh, that there was actually a significant difference if you took all of the data and you looked at the number of saplings within a square meter. Um, the Imithus agressus had like on average half the sapling per square meter, and the Moose terrestris had like there was like 3 saplings per square meter. I think some of the variability that is in the data set comes from maybe from the fact that um, some of the sugar bush were frequented more recently by deer. Uh, so the number of saplings was down in some places, and other places there was recruitment of sugar maple and red maple that was measurable because the deer hadn't gone through there. So so we think that there's an effect on recruitment of maple saplings, seedlings, for sure. And that's just one thing. So that doesn't take us down into Tennessee or further south than that. I just remember that, and is anybody else there that can speak to that? The understory damage that's done. I think it's probably pretty much the same there too. It's just um, maybe it's because I don't have too much sugar maple. Nobody's looking for the damage, but there's certainly understory damage. I think if you go back to the paper written in 2003 um, um, by Matt Callahan, I think he talks about that a little bit in his paper that there's a lack of understory. That thing comes through in a few papers, but not all of them are talking. Most of them are not about the southern part of the states. There's more information on the northern parts of the states. Um, that's what I can say. I mean, in terms of other sort of economic damage, I mean, whenever you go to a nursery and you ask them about, I usually get invited to them to for them to learn more about uh, the pest that they have, the pest being the jumping worm. They always say, people are so afraid of buying things now. If I tell them that I have jumping worms, they'll say, well, we won't buy that now. We won't buy that. So there's probably some kind of um, damage to, financial damage to the industry. We just don't have a way of, at the moment, we don't have a good way of assessing that because, there's a whole bunch of people who don't want to even touch that subject. They say, well, I don't want to tell you that I have jumping worms because then, that's going to get out there and everybody knows, and then nobody comes to my nursery. So people are really afraid of something like that happening. So that is a financial cost. So other costs are, the loss of carbon. If one day there's going to be some more uh, trade and cap systems in the U.S. as well on carbon. And then it's going to be a huge deal because the jumping worms do blow off carbon, right? So they cause loss of organic matter, and there's a climate cost to that, right? So I would imagine that's the same in the southern part of the United States or of North America. Um, it's not just up here in actually I'm not here at all. I'm in France, but but there's a carbon cost, at least, I think across North America, that has to do with jumping ones. I think Erin Cameron estimated that, not the cost, but the loss of carbon in one of her papers.
Julia has a question about something I saw popped up there. There's a Julia there.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm in Minneapolis and I live near the Mississippi River Gorge. And we have hotspots. One of the research scientists that was working with Lee Freilich was part of the group who were finding him in Minneapolis back in, I heard 2006, 2007 by Loring Park, but it could be at the U of M on 2005. And he lives near me. And so our neighborhood has had them identified in our neighborhood for over 10 years. And we live near the Mississippi River Gorge, which is a precious restored area. And we already know that there's an infestation that's causing erosion near the corner of 44th in the bend on the Minnehaha Mississippi River Road west side. So I'm just wondering, I've heard stories out east of a lot of erosions and trees uprooting in rainy seasons because their roots are not stabilized anymore because of the erosion on the upper level. And so I was just talking to that effect, what is that ecologically harming in the woodland areas that are on hilly slopes?
Yes, a couple of things. One, they removed the litter layer, and two, they changed the soil into a coffee ground type substance that's often referred to, so that it's not binding together like it normally would.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I was just checking on the ecological harm caused by that.
Yeah, definitely.
No studies of it.
Not that I'm aware of. It's Joseph,
There's a couple of things that you could say about that, right? So first of all, the casting layer is no longer really a place where plants can store their seed, right? But there's seed stored there for a while. Germination is lower, but if any seed is in there and you're losing the casting layer down the slope, you're also losing any kind of seeds that are stored in that layer. The other thing that is, I think, important to realize is that the casting layer is also where you find a lot of smaller hatchlings. So if you have a storm sometime in June, you still have a bunch of small hatchlings, and they will travel downhill with the castings. And the casting layer is also a place where the cocoons of these worms, so the egg casings of the worms are. There's a lot of egg casings in that layer. It's not the only place where they're stored, but there's a lot of them in there. And so with that, with the erosion comes a displacement or transport of the worms themselves. Whether it's in the cocoon or the wormy form, and most of the time at the bottom of the slope, there's probably a flowing water, right? So you have a river or something like that, and the worms and the cocoons will be transported by that. So you're spreading, that erosion event is spreading the worms quite long distance, right? So ordinarily these worms may be traveling, I don't know, 20 meters a year. But when they get into a river, it might be miles. So they find new places to colonize, and then they will cause damage elsewhere.
Correct. So in the registration of all these pesticides, by the way, I'm not a scientist, so I really applaud all of you for your science. I'm a citizen scientist, and I teach about bare rooting and early identification and prevention. That's kind of the core of what I do. And I've been doing it since I first learned of them in 2020. But so when we're looking at all these pesticides to protect areas like the River Gorge here in Minneapolis, a lot of the pesticides cannot be used because of harm to aquatics. Is that true when the water is rapidly running, like in a river? Or is it more likely to hurt aquatics when it's more standing water, like a lake or a pond?
You can't use any pesticides, Julia. There are no pesticides.
Well, I know there aren't, but as they're working towards getting them approved, the ones that are
Not going to
the
get
ones that they're
approved.
working on,
Don't
the
worry
ones
about
that are
it.
working. Okay, all right.
Don't worry about that one. The only ones that might get approved are these saponins, and they
And
biodegrade in 24 hours.
okay,
they're
so
not gonna sell.
they would not affect
No,
a river gorge water. Okay,
we haven't found any conventional fungicide or pyrethroid that works at a rate that anybody would register. But the tree saponins do work, and they biodegrade. So we've tested residual, and within 4 days, there's nothing
I'm very
left.
glad to hear that. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, but I was thinking when people were asking about why they expand so rapidly, I'm not aware of any of the species in this group being density dependent. There are species that will stop breeding once they reach a certain density. Lumbricus terrestris is the famous example, but there are others. These worms aren't. They don't have to mate; they just drop cocoons that are unfertilized, and away they go. So, not being density dependent makes it easy for them to overgo an area and become a real problem.
Yep. I agree with that assessment. And I think it's really important to realize that even though the pesticide like a saponin only sticking around for 1 or 2 or 3 days, um, it it might just help to how should I say this? educate the people that want to use the pesticide, and this can be done by label, right? By the label, to say it only takes 2 or 3 days for the pesticide to drop below a certain level, and it's safe after that. But also say, hey, don't spray that during a rainstorm, or if you know that there's a rainstorm coming the next day, don't do it. Wait until the rainstorm is over.
No problem. That's a good idea.
So I'd like to say a little bit more about the erosion event, what kind of significance that has for the forest, right? So we have to think about the castings that are there in terms of the nutrients that they contain, right? So there might actually be enriched um, in phosphorus, and they might be enriched in nitrogen and other nutrients as well, because the worms are consuming leaf litter, and if they're in a sugar bush, I probably can predict that they'll also be high in calcium. And so there's a couple of things that go with that, right? So the first thing is if there's an erosion event that takes half of the castings out, then you're losing quite a bit of the phosphorus and nitrogen that might become available at some point, or maybe available already, that feeds that forest. So that means that you kind of impoverishing that soil. Um, that's the first thing. The second thing is that if they are enriched in phosphorus, then if they've been washed into freshwater course, then the ecological damage might be that you are, well, not you, but the erosion event is adding additional phosphorus to maybe an already stressed water body. And so you might get eutrophication and algal blooms and all the other things that go with that in a receiving body. So there's not just the ecological damage to the forest, but there's also potentially ecological damage to a receiving body of water. In particular, if that water body is not well flushed, right? So this, say, stream water goes downhill, it just moves down slope, and it might end up in like a small bay on in Lake Champlain. That bay may not be flushed at all, so you have phosphorus building up there. And so then you have eutrophication of that and oxia. I don't know, things will die, right? So it's not the coolest thing to happen. So I guess that's the other thing that ecological damage is not just done in the place where the worms are or were, but it's also going to be done downstream, where there's receiving water bodies, that might be used. And this is also an economic issue, right? So it's if you so I live in St. Albans on very close to the lake, and every summer our town beach is being closed because of blue-green algae, and that's not due to the jumping ones, but it might be, they're not helping if there's all this erosion going on, because you're just exporting phosphorus. That's in addition to what comes off the farm fields, and I'm sure that at this point in time, the amynthas, the jumping worms, are not contributing as much as the farm fields do by far, right? So they're not yet a problem with that. But if you have more of that invasion occurring and more of the erosion occurring, then maybe at some point it becomes significant. Good question, right? So how significant is all that phosphorus that's moving downstream? Right. So closing the beach basically means that there's some economic damage, right? Because people don't go to the ice cream store anymore that's on the beach, or that the food truck is not getting any more visitors on the beach, right? So they have to find other places to go.
Well, that sounds like the basis of your new grant there, Joseph.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm looking at potentially retiring in a couple of years' time. So,
Joseph, you're too
yeah,
young to
but
retire.
probably too young to retire. Yeah, I know. I mean, you're not retired yet either. You're
No.
barely 72, right?
Hmm? Yeah, I'm getting up there, but now I'm finding out too much new stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? So I mean, when you get close to retirement, you go, why the hell should I retire? There's so much going on. Excuse my language.
Yeah. Who was asking about the comet worms for the Europeans? Some chat just came up here.
That's me again. When I asked Vera about joining your group, I pointed out that I had this beautiful key, and she says, "Oh, that's out of Great Britain. It's not out of Europe." And I'm thinking, "Oh, I've been teaching gardeners the wrong thing." So basically, I teach gardeners prevention and early detection, and one of the ways of teaching them early detection is to get them to become comfortable about touching and looking and examining the worms that have been in their garden forever. And because behaviorally, if they see a jumping worm after handling and seeing all the worms in their garden, then it's much easier for them to quickly identify a jumping worm at an early enough stage where they can be more cautious and be more careful about how they do things in the future.
Julia, why don't you want a key for earthworms in American gardens?
Well, I want a key for earthworms in American gardens.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the Midwest, so it's like, but commonly ones. So
Okay.
it's like the visual key I had found from Great Britain was a really easy one, and they're related, but they're not the same. I mean, to the common gardener, they probably don't know the difference, other than it's a night crawler or it's an angleworm. The common things that we grew up with calling these worms that have all of these specific genus and
No, I
species.
can send you something for that too.
Good. Perfect. Can you send it to us all, John?
Yeah,
So we can circulate it?
Anybody
Sure.
just write me and I'll send them that. Yeah, the book I did on the earthworms of Canada are good for all the northern states because they're the same species that are essentially there. There's a few extras that are out west, but unless you're in, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, whatnot, you won't find them. But I've been doing a lot of work in Washington and Oregon lately.
Yeah, the nice thing about this one, it was like this one page that just said like with an arrow, okay, if it's this, then go there. It was just a really nicely done
Yeah.
graphic.
Yeah.
And
That's the
when
Opal
you're
key.
when you're talking with somebody at a Bear Brook clinic and you say, oh, that, look at this to see, you don't have the large book, you have like the really simple one. So I just laminate it and just, show it.
No, this book that I done, there's all laminated. It's designed that way. It's got a
Okay,
spine cord so you can lay it flat and look at it.
that's awesome. I will definitely want to look at that up. So
Okay, no problem. Just write me.
Well, John, thank you so much. You are dear to my heart because you are the first paper I read on jumping worms about 4 or 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
it's nice to finally meet you. So thank you for
Yeah.
being so
Maybe next
early on
time.
in this field.
Maybe next time I'll figure out how to get the video to work. Yeah. Okay. Well, the people there have my email address. You can anybody just send me an email, tell me what you want, and I'll send it to you.
Does anybody have any questions for John? All right.
Yes,
So
I have a question. Hey, John,
okay.
how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing good for an old guy, Joseph. Yeah. I haven't seen you for a long time. I was up in Montreal earlier in the year, but my wife's not anxious for me to cross the border yet.
No, don't do it. I just came back from Nova Scotia. I crossed in Calais, Maine,
Yeah.
LA, Maine, and there was two poor people from New Brunswick in front of me, and they were just pulled right out, and two in a row. Your number is up. Two in a row, really? And they didn't barely ask me any questions at all. They just said,
Yeah.
"Okay, go, no problem."
When I
So
lived in
I
New
think that,
Brunswick, yeah, crossing into Maine wasn't so bad. Yeah.
yeah,
It's the big centers in Ontario, Quebec, and New York that are
yeah,
more difficult.
I agree. It's
Yeah.
it's really difficult, and it's just no rhyme or reason to what they're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, you can't predict what's going to happen. Just the same as with jumping worms, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm glad you're doing well.
Yeah. I'm busier than ever. Yeah. But,
Excellent.
yeah. Good
That's what I
colleagues.
like to hear.
Yeah. Good to see
That's what
you
I
too,
like to hear.
John. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
But anyway, that was the kind of question that Vera was asking us to ask.
Yeah.
So John, I had the impression that in Ontario you had quite a few in quite a few jumping ones in the Niagara and in the Toronto area.
Yeah. Well, actually, they were down right to Windsor, to Detroit.
Oh, really? Wow.
That's where I found them first. Yeah. It was Agrestis and Hilgendorfi down there in 2014. And that was the first verified report from Canada. And
Yeah, that was that
they're not
Bowling Green,
finding them
right?
out west at all. They're
Yeah. By the way, so earlier on, people were asking about grass. Um, so John knows this, but most of you don't know this. My wife used to be a horticulturalist, and she likes to turn lawn into flower beds. And so every time she does that, she finds jumping worms in the just when she's stripping the grass off.
yeah.
So she has another project now. I'll actually be doing some counts then, but she doesn't. So,
Good for her.
Oh, she's keeping it so you have a job, Joseph.
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know exactly. I I can I can count my jumping worms in my flower beds, right? And flower beds and the vegetable beds. They were pretty bad this year. We have a good bumper crop of them this year, and not just in our garden, but also in the forests. We had a spell of relatively cool weather for a while, and so they tend to hatch around 10 degrees Celsius, 50 Fahrenheit, and we had a lot of that for a long time. So every other week, the density went up by 50 or 60 or 70. So when I'm getting back from France in a week's time, I'm expecting there to be around 300 per square meter, because it's still relatively cool in the forest right now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Who are
yeah,
you
this
working
I
with
think
over there? Who are you
Sorry?
working, who are you working with over there?
I'm working with myself at the moment.
Oh, no.
I have a grad student who does a study on the effect of jumping worms on uh, pollinator visitation and frequency of aphids on plants.
Hmm.
And she found a couple of things. So the other thing she's measuring is, leachate, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and she's also measuring soil phosphorus and nitrogen. So she has these mesocosms that like big stock tanks where she's trying to simulate um, sort of functioning rain garden uh, with and without jumping worms. And so she's seeing differences, which is
Yeah.
quite interesting. I mean, when she proposed this thing, I said, "You're not going to see anything. Come on, yeah. How can you see that kind of an effect on aphids and ants?" And she said, "Oh, well, let's see." She was right. So so far, second field season this summer.
Yeah. Good. Well, Anna, you're in charge.
Thanks for stopping by, John. Yeah, good to hear from everybody. It is 4, so I understand if you have to go, but yeah, I feel like it's been a nice, productive conversation. John's had a lot to offer.
Yep. Well,
Absolutely.
you've got my email address there. If any of your people want to get it from you, then I can they can
Yep.
they just write the questions. I do answer all my mail.
Perfect. Yep, I'll send out after this meeting's over, just a concluding email, and I'll send out John's contact information and yeah, anything else that we talked about.
Okay. Great,
All right,
Anna.
I've got to go to bed. It's late, and we have an early morning to go to Avignon, so I better be prepared with some extra sleep.
Okay. Bonne nuit.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone, for including me in this. This is my first time here, and so it was kind of interesting to listen to the chat. I've listened to some of the recordings already before, and Joseph, I've listened to a lot of your talks that you do out in Vermont, and appreciate the information that you provide and the research that you've been doing. Jim, you might remember me. You showed me where they were on the U of M campus, and that's where I go now to get my samples when I want to show people what they look like, because seeing them live is the best way to educate. So I can almost reliably go over to Gorman, the corner there, and I found juveniles in May this year that were small and that I was able to bring to a classroom of second graders and show them what they looked like. It was kind of fascinating. So
Good.
yeah. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, very cool. Happy to
I
have
feel
Okay.
the need to channel Laura Van Riper here because I think she dropped off, but like technically you need a permit to move the worms.
Yeah, I
Under
know. I
okay.
heard that. How do I get that permit?
There's a DNR website and it's Laura Van Riper who was on the call
Yeah,
just
I
a
know
moment
ever
ago.
since they were declared invasive, and I use every precaution, obviously. I don't have them in my own garden and I don't want them. So, but to me, the only way to really give people a true picture of how to identify them is for them to see them live, and it's really hard to do that. So I will, is it in the text how to get a permit? Or can you put it
Um,
in the text?
Her name is up there. So Laura Van Ripper, just put it
Yeah,
in,
I know who Laura is, so I can
just put her
contact.
name into Google and you get her email and
Yeah,
phone.
yeah. I think I already have her email. We've met before, so
But her
I'll
email will also be on your invitation. If you
correct.
look at the
Okay,
people's emails, it will be there as well.
thank
and
you.
then I think for the process, she's going to send you a form and you're going to have to, and she doesn't, I don't think she is the sole decision maker in that process. So I have a permit, but it was not necessarily, I got the first permit and I don't know that they will give it to many people. I'll just put it that way.
Okay, okay. So I have to prove that I'm using it for educational purposes.
And they were very concerned about the precautions to be taken. So Hannah was able to move jumping worms on my permit for education, but we are also doing a research project through the university, which I think mattered. So, I mean, they may have loosened up their criteria since I went through, but I don't know that there are a lot of people clamoring for these permits. So But just heads up.
To me, the hands-on contact, I mean, I'm working with gardeners and master gardeners, and the more people who can learn early detection, the more we can bring this spread and slow it down. So
We don't
I really
disagree with
do hope,
you.
yeah.
But
I
like
really hope
Laura
that
and
I
I
can
both
help
do a lot of outreach, but
Yeah.
having live worms is a particular risk. So
Yeah.
So Laura, speaking of Laura, in the chat, if you want to copy that into your email and follow that link, she's talking about some DNR data that might be interesting to us. I've gone there, and I can't find which. I found all the details, but I don't see the worm data. So maybe you'll have better luck than me. We can have her show us how to do it next time we meet.
if you want me to show you, I can share my screen and show you where
Show
the worm
me.
data is.
There you
Okay.
go.
All right. So I'm fairly certain you should be looking at, this is the link that she put in. So you maybe saw this at the top. So
No,
ecological
I'm
monitoring.
past that. I'm down to the right objective. I just can't find the worm
Yeah.
data under the object. So
Well, so it's
she said,
not worm
assessing
data.
multiple florist floor impacts.
Yes. So it's
Okay, I got in there.
specifically leaf
Yeah.
litter, right? Exactly. And then earthworm levels in Minnesota's forest. Can you see this? Large dots represent higher earthworm effects on
I
soils.
saw that, but is there anything besides that?
I think that's it.
Okay,
But
all
we
right.
were particularly, we did not understand that this group was taking that level of data. They do a lot of monitoring in our ecosystem, and I think this is a relatively new presentation of their data set. So we found it to be quite interesting. I will stop sharing.
And those dots, the colors behind the dots are different forest types.
Yes, correct. Those are the four major ecoregions in the state. So
Okay.
exactly, northern
But we
conifers.
don't know the species of worms. We just know worm numbers. Is that right?
And I think yes, and we asked, Laura did ask a follow-up question. I wonder if I still have that email up about if I can find it, because I thought there was a follow-up to that network with a little bit more insight on the data. If I find it, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you for showing us that. So there is some data here on distribution of cumulative Minnesota worm species by forest type.
Okay, we're on a different time zone here. So
Hi, John.
I look forward to hearing from anybody there that wants to contact me. Okay,
Thanks, John.
thank you for inviting me.
See ya, John.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything to add before we go?
Just to thank you.
All right, that sounds good.
I did find the response to Laura's question, but it doesn't quite get to this jumping worm. We asked a couple of other questions, so I don't know that we have that information.
Okay, thanks very much, Angela.
Yep. All right, talk to you guys
So we
later.
probably won't meet again until September when field season is over. So probably not that first week of September even, because that's Labor Day, that first week. We'll see. We'll see.
And I'll just give a shout out for people, if you are not going to the Upper Midwest Invasive Species Conference, you might want to consider that in La Crosse this October.
We're giving 2 papers.
Excellent. It'll be a good turnout. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.